Compassion is the heartbeat of humanity. Judge Frank Caprio has spent his life reminding us that kindness is not weakness, it's strength. He's seen thousands of people pass through his courtroom, many of them nervous, ashamed, or burdened by circumstances they can't control. But instead of seeing them as case numbers, he saw them as people. Each person before him had a story, a reason, a moment that led them to where they stood. And he treated them all with the same respect and empathy he would hope to receive himself. In a world that often rushes to judge, he chose to listen first. He understood that compassion costs nothing, yet it gives everything. When someone came before him unable to pay a fine, he didn't just see a violation, he saw a struggle. A mother working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet, an elderly man living on a fixed income, a young person trying to find their way. Instead of punishment, he offered understanding. Instead of authority, he offered humanity. And through that simple act of empathy, he reminded us that the true power of justice lies not in the law, but in the heart of the one who upholds it. Compassion, as Caprio teaches, is not something reserved for grand gestures or special occasions. It's in the everyday moments, when we choose to be patient instead of angry, when we forgive instead of holding grudges, when we look past someone's mistakes to see their potential. He often said that you never truly know what someone is carrying inside. A kind word, a gentle gesture, a simple smile. These small things can lift the heaviest burdens. He's seen it countless times. People walk into his courtroom defeated and walk out renewed. Not because they won a case, but because someone finally saw them as human. I love them as human. That's the quiet miracle of compassion. It doesn't just help others, it heals us too. In his years on the bench, Caprio learned that the law may be black and white, but life never is. Every story that unfolded before him taught him something new about patience, forgiveness, and love. He understood that most people don't need to be punished, they need to be understood. He used his position not to intimidate, but to inspire. He turned the courtroom, a place often associated with fear and judgment, into a classroom of kindness. Each case became a lesson, empathy. When he let someone go with a warning or reduced their fine, it wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. His compassion came from a place of deep humility. He never saw himself as above anyone. He often shared stories about his father, a hard-working immigrant who taught him to treat everyone with dignity. His father would say, Frank, if you can't help someone, at least don't hurt them. Those words became the foundation of his life. They shaped the way he approached justice, leadership, and even everyday encounters. Compassion to Caprio wasn't an act, it was a way of being. It was choosing every single day to meet others where they are, not where we think they should be. It was remembering that at some point we all need a little grace. He also believed that compassion is contagious. When people witness kindness, they want to pass it on. It has a ripple effect that reaches far beyond what we can see. One act of mercy in a courtroom might inspire dozens more outside it. The people who stood before him often left with more than forgiveness. They left with hope. And that hope had the power to transform families, communities, even entire cities. It's not the judgment that people remember, it's the kindness. Caprio's message to the world is simple. Never underestimate the power of compassion. In times of division, anger, and misunderstanding, kindness is the bridge that reconnects us. You don't need a robe or a gavel to practice it. You just need a heart willing to see others as equals. When you choose compassion, you choose to make the world a little softer, a little safer, a little more human. The world doesn't need more judges, it needs more people like Frank Caprio. Compassion is the legacy he leaves behind. It's the message that echoes beyond his courtroom and into the hearts of millions who've heard his words or watched his videos. Every tear he wiped away, every smile he brought to someone's face, every story he listened to with patience. Those are the real verdicts of his life. They're proof that when you lead with compassion, you don't just change other people's lives, you change your own. And that, he would say, is the most important truth any of us could ever learn. Every person carries a story, and that story shapes who they are, how they act, and why they make the choices they do. Judge Frank Caprio understood this better than anyone. Sitting on the bench, he never just saw a defendant, he saw a human being with a past, with struggles, with hopes and heartbreaks. To him, every person who entered his courtroom was more than a case file or a number on a docket. They were a life full of moments that led them to that very day. He believed that when we take the time to listen, truly listen, judgment turns into understanding, and understanding turns into compassion. That belief became the foundation of everything he stood for. He often said that too many people rush to conclusions about others without ever knowing their story. Someone gets a ticket for speeding, and the world sees carelessness or irresponsibility. But when you listen to this story, you might hear about a single mother late for work after dropping her child at school, or a man hurrying to see his sick parent in the hospital. Suddenly, the act that seemed wrong becomes a window into someone's pain or desperation. Caprio knew that if you take the time to hear people, you'll find that most of them aren't bad. They're just trying to survive. And in those moments, mercy becomes not only fair, but this question in court, not to interrogate, but to connect. How are you doing today? Tell me what's going on in your life. And then he'd listen patiently, without interruption. It was never about the fine or the law. It was about the person. One said that listening is the purest form of respect, and that respect is what every human being deserves. People who expected judgment often found empathy. Many who entered his courtroom fearful or embarrassed walked out feeling seen, often in tears. Not because he let them go free, but because someone finally cared enough to hear their story. The beauty of his approach was that he saw storytelling as a bridge between justice and humanity. In each story, he saw a reflection of his own life, his family, and the struggles his father faced as an immigrant. His father worked hard, never asked for pity, and taught Frank that dignity is something no hardship can take away. That's why Caprio treated every person in front of him with that same dignity, regardless of their mistakes. He believed that understanding someone's story doesn't excuse wrongdoing, but it helps you respond to it with fairness, not cruelty. Justice without compassion, he said, is just punishment. But justice with understanding, that's where healing begins. The courtroom became a sanctuary for honesty. People opened up to him in ways they never expected. They talked about losing jobs, battling illness, raising kids alone, and trying to start over. DiCaprio listened to every word. Sometimes he smiled, sometimes he laughed, and sometimes he had to pause because their pain touched him deeply. Those moments reminded everyone watching that behind every law is a life, and behind every decision is a heart. These encounters reminded Caprio that gratitude isn't reserved for the fortunate. It is the strength of the humble. It is the quiet voice inside the human spirit that says, I will not let this break me. Gratitude to him is a way of seeing the world. It doesn't erase pain, it redefines it. When he speaks about his illness, he does so not with bitterness, but with grace. He talks about being thankful for every morning he opens his eyes, every laugh he shares with his family, every message of kindness he receives from strangers around the world. He doesn't ask, oh, why me? Instead, he asks, how can I make the most of the time I've been given? That's the heart of gratitude, the ability to live fully in the present moment, even when tomorrow is uncertain. He often recalls lessons from his father, who, despite living a life of hard labor and little wealth, was rich in spirit. His father never complained, even when life was tough. He worked long hours, raised his family with love, and carried himself with quiet dignity. From him, Frank learned that gratitude isn't about having everything you want. It's about wanting everything you have. When you learn to see blessings in the simple things, a meal shared with family, the laughter of children, the warmth of sunlight, life becomes fuller, no matter your circumstances. Gratitude also teaches humility. It reminds us that nothing in life is guaranteed, not our health, not our success, not even our next breath. Everything we have is borrowed time and borrowed grace. When we understand that, we stop taking things for granted. We start cherishing people more deeply. We start saying a thank you more often, not just to others, but to life itself. Caprio has said that one of his greatest joys is waking up and simply saying, thank you, God, for another day. It's a small ritual, but it sets the tone for everything that follows. Gratitude, he believes, is the anchor that keeps the human spirit steady, even when the waters of life get rough. He's also aware that pain and gratitude often coexist. Gratitude doesn't mean denying the hurt. It means choosing to find light even while standing in the shadows. When he speaks about his journey, he doesn't shy away from the fear or the uncertainty. He acknowledges them, but he refuses to let them define him. He tells people that gratitude is what gives him peace, not because it erases the difficulty, but because it reminds him of everything that still makes life worth living. Every message from a supporter, every moment of laughter, every act of love from his family, those are the things that sustain him. Frank Caprio's message about gratitude goes beyond his personal story. It's an invitation to all of us to see life differently. We often wait for big moments to feel thankful, for success, for wealth, for recognition. But in truth, the most profound gratitude grows from the smallest things. When we appreciate the little blessings, a kind word, a helping hand, a quiet evening with loved ones, we begin to see that life's beauty is always within reach. Even in loss, there can be appreciation for the memories. Even in endings, there can be thankfulness for the journey. He teaches that gratitude is not just an emotion, it's a discipline. It's something we choose every day, especially when it's hardest to do so. When we lose someone we love, gratitude helps us remember the moments we shared, rather than the emptiness left behind. When we fail, gratitude reminds us of the lessons we gained. And when we suffer, gratitude helps us recognize the resilience within us. It turns life's trials into teachers and its pain into purpose. That's why when Caprio speaks about his life, there's no trace of regret. He looks back not at what he couldn't control, but at what he could give. His kindness, his time, his compassion. He's grateful for every opportunity he had to make someone smile, to show mercy, to offer understanding. And that's what makes his message so powerful. He doesn't preach gratitude, he lives it. In the end, gratitude is what transforms pain into strength. It's what keeps the heart open when life tries to close it. It's the quiet power that reminds us that even when we can't change our circumstances, we can always change our perspective. Frank Caprio's life stands as living proof of that truth. Through every trial, every challenge, and every act of kindness, he shows us that gratitude doesn't just make life bearable, it makes it beautiful. Family and faith have always been the cornerstones of Judge Frank Caprio's life, the quiet forces that shaped his character, his compassion, and his calling to serve others. For him, success was never measured by the titles before his name or the accolades he received, but by the love that surrounded him and the values that guided him. He often said that everything good in his life came from the lessons his family taught him and the faith that carried him through every trial. These two pillars, love and belief, became his moral compass, reminding him, even in moments of hardship, who he was and what truly mattered. Growing up in Providence, Rhode Island, Caprio's early life was humble. His father, Antonio, was an immigrant from Italy who worked long, grueling hours to provide for his family. There were no luxuries, no easy paths, but there was love, abundant, steady, unconditional love. His father taught him the dignity of hard work and the importance of treating every person with respect. He used to tell Frank, "Son, you're no better than anyone else, but no one is better than you." Those words, simple as they were, became a guiding truth in Caprio's life. They instilled in him a deep sense of equality. The belief that every human being deserves to be treated with fairness and dignity. It was in his home, not in law school or in the courtroom, that Caprio first learned about justice. His father's lessons were rooted in faith and humility. He saw in his parents the embodiment of compassion, giving what little they had to others, sharing food with neighbors, helping those who had less. That was the first courtroom he ever knew, the kitchen table where kindness was the law and empathy was the verdict. These lessons stayed with him through every stage of his life. When he became a judge, he carried his father's voice in his heart. Every time he looked at someone standing before him, he remembered that they too had a family. They too were someone's child, someone's parent, someone's loved one. Faith for Caprio was not just religion, it was a way of seeing the world. It taught him that everyone is connected through love, and that forgiveness is the highest form of justice. His faith gave him patience when others were quick to anger, and peace when life felt uncertain. He often said that his faith reminded him to look for the good in people, even when they made mistakes. It guided him to choose mercy over judgment, and to listen with his heart before speaking with authority. He believed that God doesn't measure people by their failures, but by their capacity to love and to learn. That belief shaped the way he approached every case, every decision, and every encounter. He often shared stories about his family in court, not to boast, but to remind others of the simple truths that bind us all. He would tell defendants about his father's sacrifices, about the lessons of perseverance and decency that came from watching a man who gave everything for his children. He spoke of his mother's kindness, her gentle words, her faith that never wavered even when life was hard. Those stories weren't courtroom theatrics. They were acts of faith. Through them, he showed people that no matter where you come from, no matter what mistakes you've made, you can always choose to do what's right. For Caprio, family has always been more than blood. It's community. He sees everyone as part of a larger human family deserving of compassion and respect. When someone in his courtroom was struggling, he would often remind them that they weren't alone. He'd say, "Oh, we all need a little help sometimes." That sentiment came from his own upbringing, where helping others wasn't an exception. It was a way of life. He believes that the true measure of a person isn't how they treat those above them, but how they treat those who have nothing to offer in return. Faith also carried him through moments of personal pain. When he was diagnosed with cancer, he turned once again to gratitude and prayer. He didn't ask, "Why me?" He asked for strength to continue serving, to keep spreading kindness, and to keep inspiring others to live with empathy. His faith gave him courage to face uncertainty with peace, and his family gave him reason to keep fighting. Surrounded by his loved ones, he found comfort in knowing that he had lived a life guided by love and integrity. He has often said that his greatest blessing isn't his career or fame. It's his family who stood by him in every storm and celebrated with him in every triumph. He credits his wife, children, and grandchildren as his greatest joys. They are his source of light, his reason for everything he does. He often speaks of how much they've taught him patience, laughter, and the beauty of unconditional love. Watching his grandchildren grow, he says, reminds him of life's simple wonders, the same ones his father cherished. He believes that family is the thread that weaves generations together, carrying forward not just names but values. Caprio's message to the world is rooted in this truth. At the end of life, it's not the awards or the titles that matter. It's the love you gave and the love you received. It's how you treated people, how you made them feel, and how faithfully you lived your values. Fame fades, accomplishments gather dust. But kindness endures through the lives you've touched. He often reflects that one day the courtroom will be empty, the gavel will rest, and the cameras will stop rolling. But the lessons of love, compassion, and faith will continue through those who heard them. He reminds us that faith without love is hollow, and family without gratitude is fragile. To him, the two are inseparable. Faith teaches us to love, and family gives us a place to practice that love. They ground us when the world becomes chaotic, and they remind us what truly matters, being there for one another. Judge Frank Caprio's life is a living example of what happens when family and faith guide every decision. They gave him his sense of justice, his humility, and his hope. And through his words and actions, he's passed those lessons on to millions. His legacy is not one of authority, but of heart. A legacy built on the simple truth that love, faith, and family will always be the foundation of a meaningful life. Judge Frank Caprio's final and most enduring message to the world is simple, but profoundly powerful. Leave the world kinder than you found it. It is a message born not from theory, but from a lifetime of experience, decades spent listening to stories of struggle, forgiveness, and redemption in his courtroom. Caprio has seen humanity at its best and at its worst. He's seen people fall, but he's also seen them rise. And through it all, he came to believe that the only thing that truly matters, the only thing that endures beyond all titles, laws, and legacies, is kindness. If every person did just one act of good, one gesture of empathy, one word of encouragement, one moment of understanding, the ripple effect could change the world. For Caprio, kindness is not just an emotion or a passing thought, it is an action. It is something you choose every day, even when it's difficult. In his courtroom, he often met people who were frustrated, scared, or ashamed. Instead of responding with cold authority, he met them with warmth. A small smile, a patient tone, a simple acknowledgement of their humanity. These were his tools of justice. He understood that the law can punish wrongdoing, but only kindness can heal wounds. Every person who stood before him walked away not just with a verdict, but with a reminder that compassion still exists in the world. And that reminder, he believed, could inspire them to extend the same kindness to others. He once said that kindness is contagious, and his life proved it. Millions of people around the world watched his courtroom videos and felt moved, not by drama or spectacle, but by the quiet, sincere moments of humanity. A judge who listened, a man who forgave, a heart that cared. His empathy reminded people that goodness still matters, that decency still counts. In a world often divided by anger and judgment, his words and actions became a beacon of what's possible when we choose understanding over pride. He believed that each small act of compassion is like lighting a candle. And when enough candles are lit, darkness cannot win. Caprio's idea of leaving the world kinder is not about grand gestures or heroic acts. It's about the small, everyday choices that define who we are. Holding the door for a stranger, speaking gently to someone who's struggling, forgiving someone who hurt you, calling an old friend just to say hello. These moments may seem insignificant, but he believed they are the building blocks of a better world. He often said that you never know what someone else is going through. That behind every smile, there may be pain, and behind every mistake, there may be a story. To act kindly, even when you don't understand, is to honor the shared humanity that binds us all. This philosophy came from his upbringing. His father, a hard-working immigrant, taught him that life's purpose is not to take, but to give. He would say, if you can't do great things, do small things in a great way. Those words became the rhythm of Frank's life. Whether he was judging a case, speaking to a classroom, or talking with his grandchildren, he carried that principle with him. Make people feel valued. Make them feel seen. His father's wisdom and his own faith merged into one belief, that the true test of a person's character is how they treat others when they have nothing to gain. Kindness, for Caprio, is also a form of legacy. He knows that one day his voice will fade, his name may be forgotten by history, but the kindness he spread will live on in others. Every person he touched, the single mother he helped, the struggling student he encouraged, the stranger who smiled watching one of his videos, carries a piece of that goodness forward. He often says that the goal is not to be remembered for what you owned or achieved, but for how you made people feel. Did you lift others up? Did you bring peace where there was anger? Did you love fully, forgive freely, and serve humbly? If you did, then your life has meaning. Not because of what you took, but because of what you gave. He's also realistic about the world. He knows that cruelty, injustice, and suffering will always exist, but he refuses to let that be an excuse for indifference. He believes that even if you can't change the whole world, you can change someone's world. Maybe you can't solve hunger, but you can feed one person. Maybe you can't stop all pain, but you can comfort one heart. He says if everyone did just a little good, we'd live in a world we could all be proud of. That's not idealism. It's a blueprint for hope. Caprio's kindness is also rooted in forgiveness. He knows that people aren't perfect, and everyone makes mistakes. But he believes forgiveness is a higher form of strength. It allows people to heal, to grow, and to become better. Many times he's forgiven fines, reduced penalties, or offered second chances, not because it was easy, but because he saw the potential in people to do better. His courtroom was not a place of shame, it was a place of renewal. That same spirit of forgiveness is what he wants the world to embrace, to stop holding on to anger and start building bridges. As he faces the twilight of his life, Frank Caprio's reflections are not filled with regret, but with gratitude. He looks back on his journey, from a young boy in Providence to a judge admired across the world, and he sees one constant thread: kindness. It's what his parents taught him, what his faith reinforced, and what he hopes will continue long after he's gone. He often says that life is not measured by how long we live, but by how deeply we love. And love expressed through kindness is the most enduring legacy anyone can leave. So his message to us all is this: be kind, not someday, but today. Be kind to your family, your neighbors, and even to strangers. Be kind when it's easy, and even more so when it's hard. Because in the end, we all leave this world the same way, with nothing but the memories we've created in the hearts of others. And if those memories are filled with love, mercy, and understanding, then we have truly lived well. Judge Frank Caprio's life stands as proof that kindness doesn't just make the world better, it makes us better. And if we each do our part, then maybe, just maybe, we can leave this world a little gentler, a little warmer, and a little kinder than we found it.